In this part, I want to discuss the wisdom behind the classification of blue and green. Why do we really need this? So why do we need these colors, blue and green? And why do we need the jargons that are associated with blue and green, discrete and continuous? What do they really mean? We have already seen a concrete image of what discrete and continuous mean in terms of blue buckets and green ruler. But why do we even need these jargons? Can't we just live with the jargons that we have already, dimension and measures? They are confusing enough for many people. So why do we need to add more jargons to come up with possibilities like discrete dimension, discrete measure, continuous dimension, and all of this? What is the need? I try to understand the wisdom in these extra jargons, and I think there is some wisdom in these extra jargons that would help us to get more value out of Tableau. That's what I want to share in these videos. So this topic is going to be a little bit complicated, so I just want to restart from basics and quickly run you through so that we have the whole context with both of us, and then we would launch into some of these more complex ideas. So it's the same employee master data you have seen in a number of videos earlier. So what happens when you bring this data into Tableau? So it's just a simple tabular data. So if you focus on the type of data that is there, so there are only two types of data. There's text, which is name, role, department, gender, blah blah, and there is number, employee number, age, gender, and all that. And then, as we have seen already, date behaves like text most of the time, as it is listed here. So this is what Tableau does. Tableau splits them into two groups. One part, the upper part, containing dimensions, which is text and dates, and then measures, which is numbers. What else can we do? If you look at how Excel pivot table handles this, just list the same list of values. You can see just the column names are listed in alphabetical order. And what do you think is more useful? I've asked this question to a number of users, number of actually business users. Having the numbers separately is very useful, because numbers are what we are interested in typically analyzing, and there are fewer numbers than dimensions, so it is good to have them separately. So there is value in splitting things in dimension and measures. As I've already said, what is the logic that Tableau is using? So whenever there is text, it is put in the dimension area. Whenever there is any number, it is put automatically in the measure area. When there is a date, if it recognizes that as a valid date format, it is going into dimensions area with the calendar icon. If it does not recognize that, it still goes there, but with a string icon. Essentially, only numbers get to the bottom section, everything else ends up in the top section, which is considered as text. That's the logic. Now, if you pay attention to the colors, the top section the dimension section has only blue, and the bottom section has only green. So the logical conclusion anybody should come to is dimension is given color blue, dimension means it's blue, number means it's green. But let me ask this question, is the opposite true? Can we say blue means dimension and green means measure? Am I trying to play a game here? Not really, you will understand, right? Here is the real meaning. In Tableau, they say blue means discrete and green means continuous. Oh, why and how? So just I want to remind you, what did we see already? When we saw buckets, I said blue buckets are discrete, they are separate, and the default behavior of blue buckets, which is dimension or text, is to list unique values when we try to aggregate them. Whereas with respect to numbers, the green ruler is continuous. That means we are drawing an axis from minimum to maximum. So when you bring something like a blue bucket, a discrete value, into Tableau, it's going to list unique values. When we bring something like a number, which is green ruler continuous, Tableau is going to draw an axis from min to max, right? So essentially, in the previous videos, I've told you dimension, which means bucket, is discrete, and numbers, which is the green ruler, which is continuous. Now I am contradicting myself. Why? So the question is, why can't we say this? Blue is equal to dimension is equal to discrete, green is equal to measure is equal to continuous. Is this correct? In almost 99% of the cases, this is correct. There is no problem at all. There are a few exceptional cases in which the second part of the equation doesn't really hold. All dimensions may not be discrete, all measures may not be continuous. Because sometimes measure can behave like dimension and dimension can behave like a measure. In other words, because we saw dimension is nothing but a text and measure is nothing but a number. Number can behave like text and text can behave like number. I'm interchanging these terms because we all understand number and text much more intuitively than these jargon dimension and measure, but they are exactly the same. Yeah. So let's hold on to this number and text whenever we talk of dimension and measure. So let's get into some examples using the same employee master. So let's focus here. I'm gonna give you the situations that requires us to go beyond blue means dimension and green mean measure. Why? Right? So here is the first case where a number can behave like a text. Let's take the number like employee number, which is a sequential ID 1, 2, 3 to up to 20 here, right? What is the behavior here? By default, Tableau is putting it in the bottom section because it is just seeing this is a number. So Tableau doesn't have intelligence to know this is not a real number that we will use in the sense of we will do aggregation, we will find total of employee numbers, average of employee numbers. Doesn't make sense, right? So this actually should behave like a text. So this is a case where we can safely take this employee number and move it to dimension, because at best if you use employee number in a report, we want to list all the unique values. So how does it behave? This number behaves like a blue bucket. It wants to list unique values. It does not behave like the green ruler. So now let's go to the second case, which is age. Typically, so if we bring age into a report, let's say we are interested in average age at a department level, right? How does it behave here? Does it behave like a blue bucket or a green ruler? So age being a number and then we are aggregating this to get an average. This is behaving like a number, like a green ruler. So Tableau will draw an axis, right? And then we'll plot all these values. And then the third case, now we are still with the age, but this time I want to list each age and then how many people are in that age, what we call the age distribution. So for those of you who probably want to see something in Tableau, please wait. I just want to run through all of these 9 scenarios first so that you have a full idea, and then I will switch to Tableau and we'll run through each of these examples so you can clearly see how Tableau treats them. Yeah. So here we want to list each age and how many people in that age. In this case, how does age behave? In the previous case, we saw age behave like a number, right? In this case, does it behave like a number or a text? So in this case, it behaves like blue buckets. We want to list each one of those individual values, right? So this is a valid case of a number behaving like a text, right? And then age. Here, the next logical thing is we don't really want to see ages one by one, like somebody is at 21, somebody is at 23. In a company there could be 50, 100 values, right? But we want to see them in what we call bins or buckets, like people in 25 to 30, 35 to 40, or 20 to 30, 30 to 40, something like that. This is much more real world requirement, right? In this case, so we want to group the ages from into bins, and then we want to look at how many people in each bin. In this case, how does age bin behave? Does it behave like bucket or does it behave like ruler? Bucket, right? So the age can sometimes behave like number, can sometimes behave like text, right? So we have seen 2 cases where it behaves like text. So now let's look at a third case. So now I am calculating average age at a department level, but then rather than just displaying just average age for each department, I want to flip around. I want to put average age and then at that age how many departments are in that average kind of a band, right? In that case, I am taking an aggregation first, so I am calculating average and then I am listing each of those individual values like a blue bucket, right? So these are the cases where there is a complexity built in terms of number behaving like text. Yeah, so now let's go to the next category where text can behave like number. Like let's take name, right? So if I double click on a name, Tableau is going to list all individual names in the report. But what if I want to do a count of names to identify duplicate records? In that case, I want to count on that name. So how do we do that? When we do that, are we doing a green ruler like behavior, or are we doing bucket like behavior? Because we are counting, which is an aggregation, automatically this becomes like a green ruler behavior, right? A number behavior. And then let's look at dates. I want to display employees joining in each month in a line chart to see trends. So we have join date here, right? So here I want to take this month of the joining date and then put them all in a continuous fashion, and then I want to see trends overall, which months in which year we have more employees joining. How does it behave in this case? Date here does not behave like dimension, which is what the typical behavior is, but here it behaves like a ruler because we want to see a continuous trend from the beginning to the end. And then here is a case where the same month, but this time it behaves like a dimension, right? So I want to see which are our busiest month in terms of new employees joining. So I want to list January, February, March, and then see which months are the busiest, right? So how does it behave? Does it behave like blue buckets, or does it behave like green ruler? Blue buckets, right? Because we are going to list each of these individual months. Yeah. And then one final case where let's assume that employee number, we already moved it to the dimension. So it's treated like a text now. Now I want to filter the values from 10 to 15. And what would be easy to filter? The buckets, meaning listing 1 to 20 all the numbers and then selecting 10 to 15 one by one like a bucket, or just having a slider kind of a filter which is matching the green ruler kind of a thing, just starting and ending values, which is easier, right? So here employee number, we decided it would be a dimension, but even then when we want to apply filter from a convenience perspective, it's better to make it behave like a number, right? So these are the 9 cases. Now let's switch to Tableau and then see how this really works. So here I have employee numbers listed, right? So I have from 1 to 20 and employee number is green, right? So how do we make a report like this in Tableau? So let me clear this. So if I double click on this, the default behavior is it is going to put some aggregation, and then because it is a number, it is going to behave like green ruler, right? So we are getting green here, right? So this is not what we want. We want a behavior which is consistent with text, right? So we are going to clear this. We are going to move it permanently as a dimension, and that gives us the blue behavior. And then I double click on age. I got the age. This is fine. Employee number is permanently a dimension, no problem. It always behaves like text. So now let's go to this case. Average age. Here age is behaving like a number, typical. There's nothing fancy here, just departments and average age. Departments are listed like individual values, unique values. Average age is plotted in an axis, nothing fancy here. But here let's look at this case. So where age is listed, each individual age is listed, a behavior like dimension, and then the count of employees in that age. How do we produce a graph like this? So if I double click on age, it's gonna get by default aggregated and then a green ruler behavior. This is not what we want, but I do not want to move age here also, because I have other equations, that other charts that I'm doing which rely on age as a number. So temporarily, only for this chart, I want age to behave like a text. How do we enable this? So one way to do that is, so bring here into the detail shelf. Yeah. So now we want to first make it a dimension only in the context of a report. So I have made this a dimension now, but because it originally started off as a number, so Tableau is still considering it to be green because it is still a number, right? So we want Tableau to treat it as a bucket like a blue. So we say discrete. So now I can safely bring it here, and then you will see all these values. Yeah, in this case, age is behaving like a text only in the context of this report. Now I can see number of employees in each of this age group, turning on labels and then probably sorting them. Now we can see how many employees are in which age buckets, right? So this is possible with treating age, which is a number, like a text. So now then we go to a slightly related case. Rather than listing individual values here, right? So we want to group them, right? So how do we do that? So I want to take age and then create a bin. So Tableau by default suggests some number. I just want to go with, let's say 5. So 25 to 30, 30 to 35, something like that, right? So let's say okay. So Tableau creates a bin, right? So let me delete this, and then so I'm going to double click on the bin. So now what you see when the values are listed, these are numbers, but they are behaving like text, because bins are treated like, you know, they are discrete, they are, you know. So if I right click here and describe this, so you could see this is a discrete dimension, this is a dimension, and it is discrete also, it's a blue one, right? So now we have got the buckets. Now we can put number of employees there. Yeah, so if I want the bar chart, I can move it over here, and then we can see, you know, if I flip it around, this is what we call a histogram, really, right? So those are the cases with respect to age, when we are dealing with age as an individual or as a grouped bucket, right? Next comes a slightly more complex case where I have aggregated age. So you see average age. Yeah, so let me first show it to you how this one looks. So for example, so I want to bring department and average age. So you can see these values. So there is 2 departments have 35 as average value, and 2 departments have 46. So there are 3 distinct values in average, right? So which is what I want to list. So I want to list average age. Here I am listing an aggregated number, a number aggregated at the department level as like a dimension behavior, blue behavior, listing them individual values rather than drawing like here, right? How do I achieve that? And then in the same report, I also have min and maximum age, which are behaving like basically text, right? So here, because I'm putting them under measure values, right? So if I remove this, for example, and then just have, let's say, only one of them, and then I put here, so now I can see one of the age here is behaving like a green ruler, which is like a number, right? So drawing an axis, and this one is behaving like a blue bucket. How do we achieve this? So let me clear this. So, and like the previous case, so let's bring, or let me keep this and then as a reference, so we will do it here. So first I want to take the age, and then I want to convert this into a discrete value. So as soon as I did this, so it is coming up here. So then I want to put the departments here. So each of these values are there. Now I can add whatever I want. So I instead of sum of age, I want to put, let's say, minimum of age. Now we are able to get here, right? In this case, we took an aggregated value and then we are able to convert this. So we have handled a few variations of age where age is behaving on its own, like each value it is listed as a separate value, or it can behave as a group. We take each of these values, group them into bins, and then we plot them, or we aggregate age at a certain level, for example here at a department level using average aggregation, and then there again we can use this as a discrete thing, listing each one of these individual values. In all these special cases, 3 cases that I've listed, age, which is a number behaving like a text, in some cases directly raw number, in some cases the aggregated number, right? That is why we need this classification of blue and green. So when you are seeing any blue or any green in this canvas area, this means the blue means we are listing individual values, green means there is an axis drawn. That's why the idiom that I gave you, blue buckets and green ruler, will help you go a long way. So now let's flip to the other side where we want to look at cases where dimension is behaving like a number, right? So here I have listed all the names, and then here I want to count each of these names. All I have done is I've taken name and then applied an aggregation. Now we get a green. This is something, you know, that we do very regularly. There's nothing rocket science about it. Now let's go to the 2 last cases in terms of dates. So this is joining date trend by month. So I brought the month and then I made it green. That means it's giving me from the first month, which is March 2012 in the data, to the last month, which is January 2017. If you click here, you would be able to see this is, you know, March 2012, and at the bottom is January 2017. Every month is listed here, and then for each of those values this sum aggregation is done. Yeah, when it is green, so green ruler starts from min, goes up to maximum. Whereas in the next case I have taken month, but this time I've made it discrete at the month level. So that means January, February, March, each of them are listed. So they are taken on their own. There is no continuous, you know, from the first month. So January behaves like text, as if it is a text, right? So it does not have association with the year. So all the Januaries in 2015, 16, all of them are grouped together. So that is what we are seeing here. So why is this view useful? So one of the things you can appreciate is, here the question I asked is, I want to see which months are the busiest. So normally when it comes to time, we want to see them in a proper progression from January to December, right? Or from the first date to the last date, like in this previous chart. But here we want to see which months are the busiest. So we want to apply a sorting. So we can see January, July and September. So this is possible because here month is behaving like text and we can sort text in any way. Whereas the number, green ruler, is not sortable like you are seeing here. I can't sort this, right? So the starting value and ending value, because the definition of continuous is, by understanding min and max, we can know the entire values. We can't fiddle around with that, right? So if you want a way to change these orders, right, in case of a quarter or a month, best performing quarter, best performing month and all of that, then a discrete kind of a concept is useful. Yeah, so the date is quite complex and there's quite a bit of variation. So I would intend to create date is quite a bit complex and there are a number of cases to handle. So I would probably create a separate video considering all the complexities and special cases and nuances of dates. For now, these two examples would give you a taste of how discrete and continuous works in terms of dates. And the final item is employee number. So as you can see here, employee number is on the dimension, right? So it is listing individual values. And then if I turn on a filter, this is the kind of filter you will get, all these values. But I want to get a filter like this, which is, you know, for example, I want to filter from 15 to 20. This is so much easier than selecting each one of these 15, 16, 17 like this, right? This becomes much more difficult. How do we enable a behavior like this? So like I said, so let me remove all of this, for example. So let me remove this. So employee number, and then let's say just let's say age. Yeah, so now I want to turn off filters. So you see this discrete filters listing each individual value, blue bucket behavior. Now I want a ruler filter. How do I do that? So one option is bring this into the detail area. This is like a workbench, right? So anything you want to fiddle around in terms of changing from text to numbers, this is the area to use. So now I want to change this from discrete to continuous, and then now I can turn on show filter, and then I can remove this. Now I got the filter, and then I can do my filters joyfully. Yeah, so these are all the cases where based on my experience, I found having this distinction is very helpful. Before we close this chapter, I wanted to show you two special cases that you should be aware of. Normally when you draw a scatter, right, so if I take for example age and salary, it draws only one number. Why is that? Because all of the age is aggregated into one number and then all of the salary is aggregated to one number, so you get one combination. But that's not really what we expect to see. We want to see every single number. In that case, if you go here and then saying rather than aggregate measures, I want to list each individual value, I can uncheck this box. Now all the 20 records will be there. As you can see at the bottom here, 20 marks, right? So this is listing each individual value, and look at what is happening here in terms of the pills. Both pills are basically green, which is consistent for us. Both are numbers, they are exhibiting a ruler like behavior, so we have axis here. But then the aggregation is missing. Typically anytime you bring a number into the view, it is always aggregated. So only in special cases like this this is disaggregated. Normally if you want to disaggregate, it will become a dimension like kind of a behavior. For example, if I take this age and salary and then turn age into a discrete thing, and you will get a circle plot here. Yeah, so if I turn this age into a continuous one, you will get a scatter plot. Yeah, so it's doing this flip. Now Tableau decides it needs two green pills for the scatter plot, that's why it's drawing a scatter. And the moment you change it to a discrete, age is listed like an individual value, and then the rest, this green, it is given a circle plot. Yeah, so those are all the different cases of understanding how green and blue works in Tableau would be helpful, I guess. So let me summarize, going back to the PowerPoint. So in dimension and measures, In other words, text and numbers, they behave like themselves. In these cases, the analogy that I gave you, blue buckets and green ruler, they apply to dimension and measure. So we can assume blue means dimension and green means measure safely, no problem. But when we want a number to behave like text or a text to behave like number, then we need to decide what color do I want to see in Tableau. Once we bring it into the canvas, what color pill we want. If you want to list individual values, then we have to select blue for buckets, and if you want to draw an axis, so we select green for ruler. So with that, so we end this session. In the next session, I want to delve into blue and green dates at a much more depth. So why we need looking at all the different possibilities, from filtering to not only month, we look at other things, and then what's the wisdom behind creating these two possibilities, why Tableau should not have just left us to do only one type of date, right? So I gave you already one example, but we'll look at some more examples, and then the enormous possibilities that Tableau throws open in front of us by making both of these things available. Dates was one of the things that I was very impressed when I encountered Tableau as a tool first time in my life, now maybe 4 years back. Yeah, dates was something that was very difficult to handle in all other BI tools, and here this was like super easy and gave me a lot of flexibility. So it deserves its own chapter on its own, so we will handle that next.